Hi everybody, it's Senpai Fanfics back at it with another amazing content. What if Deku was in the world of One Punch Man Part 1? If you guys would like to see more videos like this in the future, hit the subscribe button and notifications on for more videos like this. Thank you to the creator of the fanfic, which will be linked below. Let's start it. For the residents of City A, the day started nice and peaceful as the children were dropped off at school while their parents headed off to work. All seemed right with the world, until a massive explosion suddenly erupted in the middle of the city, destroying buildings and killing thousands of people in a split second. People from miles away stumbled or fell as the shockwave from the explosion hit everything in the surrounding area, shaking nearby buildings and shattering windows. Once the explosion subsided, a massive crater was all that was left of what used to be a residential area in City A. Standing in the center of the crater was the source of the explosion, which so happened to be a mysterious being who was a large, purple hairless humanoid with two rounded antennas on its head and had a muscular body. The mysterious being took in his surroundings in disgust before he flew up into the air in a great burst of speed. Once high in the air, the mysterious being conjured up 4 orbs of pure energy before launching them throughout the city, destroying even more buildings and killing all who reside in them. Hero Association HQ, Control Room. Inside the control room of the Hero Association headquarters, everyone was trying to contain the situation when a nearby explosion caused by the mysterious being made the building shake. "It's closing in," shouted a console operator. Another operator turned away from his blaring console, looking for answers. "Damn, so who's available?" "We have confirmation that Lightning Max and Smile Man are on their way," exclaimed a female console operator who inwardly hoped that the 2 A-class heroes could defeat the mysterious being. City A. Lightning Max and Smile Man were just 2 of the 31 heroes who were lying among the pile of rubble, having been effortlessly defeated by the mysterious being who continued to wreak havoc across City A uninterrupted. "Mommy! D-Daddy!" cried a little girl, standing on her lonesome in the middle of the ruins that once made up a part of City A. So distracted in her grief of losing both her parents that the little girl didn't notice the mysterious being walking towards her from behind. The mysterious being studied the crying little girl for a moment before he stretched out his rapidly bulging arm with the intent to squish the girl like a grape. With an evil chuckle, the mysterious being clenched his enormous hand around the little girl but was bewildered when he didn't feel the human girl's bones snap or see her blood squirt out. The mysterious being opens his hand and to his surprise, he doesn't see any sign of the little girl, dead or alive. Sensing something, the mysterious being glanced to his right and saw the still-living little girl with another human who had somehow managed to grab the girl and take her away in the split second that it took him to clench his fist. "You're a fast one," stated the mysterious being who was aware that the human moved so fast that he didn't see them. "Who are you?" The little girl stopped crying as she stared up at the hero with tearful eyes wide in shock and awe. "I tease you." The hero smiled down at the little girl who he gently lowered to the floor. "Don't you fear." The hero stood up to his full height of 7 feet 4 inches and turned to face the mysterious being, showcasing his costume, which was made up of a full-body green jumpsuit that stretched along his muscular build, a red belt, beige gloves which covered the full length of his arms, red boots, knee pads that extended down his legs, and a diamond-shaped respirator which hung by his neck. The man himself had a short mess of dark green curly hair that stuck at odd angles around his head, green eyes, and a set of 4 symmetrical freckles in diamond formations with 1 on each cheek. His cheeks have lost much of their roundness, having somewhat sharpened over the years. Unique in appearance, but it didn't turn away from his attractiveness. "For Deku is here," declared Izuku Midoriya, or rather, the S-class rank 1 hero, Deku. The mysterious being simply looked down at the hero in annoyance. "Deku? As in useless?" "You're kidding," asked the mysterious being in doubt. "What kind of half-ass name is that?" "Mine is far superior, for I am Vaccine Man," declared the mysterious being who passionately slapped his chest. "The Earth is a single living organism. You filthy humans are nothing but a disease-causing bacteria, eating away at her precious life force," exclaimed Vaccine Man with self-assured passion. At the same time, the mysterious being began to transform as his muscles bulged, spikes grew all along his body, and 2 long, but sharp tusks stretched out from his jaw. "Why do they always feel the need to tell me all about their backstory?" wondered the smiling hero, Izuku Midoriya, who watched on as Vaccine Man quickly grew taller until he got to the point where the mysterious being was now a towering monster of muscle, spikes, and razz. In the tenth of a second, Deku uppercuts Vaccine Man with more than enough power to rip the head off of the mysterious being. To the little girl who watched the number one hero defeat the mysterious being with practical ease, it looked like Deku just killed the monster with an actual punch made up of green lightning. Vaccine Man's large monstrous head was launched up into the air faster than a speeding bullet and disappeared from view, having flown higher than the human eye could naturally see. Even more spectacular was that Deku's punch didn't just kill the powerful monster, but the power unleashed from his fist dispersed the rising smoke and clouds that filled the sky, leaving nothing behind but clear blue skies for all of City A to enjoy. The little girl's eyes sparkled in awe as she watched the number one hero, Deku, turn towards her with the same caring smile he was famously known for. The sunlight that shined down on the hero only made him look more angelic in her eyes. So distracted in her awe, the little girl didn't notice or care when the headless corpse of Vaccine Man fell over with a loud thud. Hero Association HQ, Control Room. We can't thank you enough for your help, Deku. We would have been in big trouble if not for you, thanked Bearded Worker, bowing his head in respect for the number one hero. Even after defeating the dragon-level monster, Deku went out of his way to bring back the 31 injured heroes and any civilians who were injured during Vaccine Man's rampage. They were all quickly transferred to the infirmary so they could be treated by the best doctors available. Most of the other S-class heroes would have just left after defeating the mysterious being. Despite being 25 years old and officially classed as the strongest hero, Izuku Midoriya could still get a bit bashful when given praise. It was nothing. Just doing my duty, that's all, answered Midoriya, who waved off Bearded Worker's praise with an embarrassed chuckle. The smiling Bearded Worker raised his head, elated that they have someone like Deku to protect them from global threats. Still, you have our gratitude. His colleagues all showed their agreement by happily nodding or verbally praising Deku. Izuku chuckled with an embarrassed blush. I guess I have no other choice but to say you are all welcome. Now then, if that's all, I best get going. The cities won't patrol themselves, he said, and with a wave, the hero walked out of the control room to continue his patrol. As he strolled down the hallway while politely greeting the Hero Association employees who all showed their gratitude to him, Izuku felt like reminiscing about the life he had made for himself. To think that this is my life now. 10 years ago, he had been nothing more than a quirkless loser who fantasized about becoming a hero like every other kid. Now, he was the number one ranked hero in the entire world, having held the title ever since the Hero Association established itself 3 years ago. For the 7 years before that, he had been fighting criminals and mysterious beings as a vigilante. Back in his original world, vigilantism was considered a serious offense. At first, he had been worried about being potentially named a criminal by the world governments for performing his vigilante acts, not that it would have stopped him from going out and saving people. Imagine his surprise when he found out that not only was he not getting in trouble for his vigilantism, but the government was encouraging him to continue. Being able to fight toe-to-toe with monsters was probably what convinced the politicians to look the other way. In the past 15 years, the frequency of mysterious being appearances had increased, with some being much more dangerous than others, which would explain why vigilantism was encouraged. There was only so much the police and military could do against monsters that could withstand gunfire and crush tanks with their bare hands, so Izuku and others who could defeat monsters on their own were welcome to do so by the world governments. A couple of years later, Izuku's dream came true once he officially became the number one ranked hero in the entire world, just like All Might. I only wish All Might and Mother could see this, he thought, missing the two most important people in his life, especially his mother. 10 years was too long to be without the woman who single-handedly raised him. Stepping out of the Hero Association headquarters, Izuku looked up at the clear blue skies and blocked the sunlight from hitting his eyes. Reminiscing made him remember how he ended up in this world in the first place. 10 years ago, USJ. Izuku Midoriya couldn't believe they all managed to survive an actual attack from villains. Class 1 Array's trip to the USJ facility was intended to be used as an example for a training exercise on how they would save civilians during different kinds of natural disasters, like landslides, fires, and floods. Instead, the whole trip had become far scarier and more dangerous than anyone could have predicted. Villains attacked the USJ facility intending to kill the symbol of peace, All Might. Unfortunately for everyone involved, All Might didn't make it to the class on time like he was supposed to. With their main objective unavailable, the villains then turned their aggression onto the class of first-year hero students. There were only 2 pro heroes to fight the villains, and while Eraserhead did a good job in taking out many of the small-time villains, he was eventually beaten by the villain who had severed hands all over his body, and the giant monster with the exposed brain. 13 was also defeated by a villain who had a warp quirk, which left the first-year students to fend for themselves. All of Class 1A battled villains all across the USJ facility, but before anyone could be severely hurt, All Might showed up just in time. What small-time villains that remained were quickly taken out by All Might. Witnessing the symbol of peace defeat the villains in so little time filled the students of Class 1A with hope at a time that it was badly needed. That hope wavered when All Might battled against the monster that the leader called a Nomu. To the shock of those who witnessed the fight, the Nomu could not only keep up with All Might, but it could hurt him as well. The leader of the villains explained that Nomu possessed multiple quirks, as hard as it was to believe, including a shock absorption quirk which nullified all the damage done by All Might's punches. All seemed lost until All Might showed them what it was like to go plus ultra and went beyond his limit. In a clash between titans, All Might came out victorious after he launched Nomu out through the ceiling of the facility with one powerful smash. As expected by the number 1 hero, All Might was victorious, but he didn't come out unscathed. The tough fight had left All Might weak, which wasn't missed by the villain leader. The villain tried to attack the weakened symbol of peace, but Izuku moved to stop him and nearly got himself killed in retaliation. Thankfully, the rest of the teachers arrived just in the nick of time. Before the villain leader could kill him, Snipe managed to shoot him several times, forcing the injured leader to teleport away with the warp quirk villain. With the Nomu and the villains finally defeated, Izuku dropped down to his knees and let out a breath of air in relief. The successor of All Might could never have predicted that he would nearly die so early in his hero career, especially not while he was still just a first-year student. That was the unpredictable hero's life for you. Fucking brats! Izuku turned towards the source of the voice and widened his eyes when he saw that one of the unconscious villains had woken up. The shirtless villain was lithe when compared to the rest of his comrades, and from the way he was supporting his bruised right arm, he appeared to be injured, likely caused by Eraserhead during his beatdown on the small-time criminals. That was good. It meant Izuku could probably apprehend the criminal on his own without resorting to hurting himself by using One for All. Just as Izuku was about to take on the criminal, he stepped back when he saw the man aim his hand toward Midoriya, who noticed how the limb glowed a sinister shade of red. The 1A student didn't know what the villain's quirk was, so he kept his distance just in case. "Die, you little shits," roared the villain before he fired a red beam of energy from his uninjured hand, but not at Midoriya. With the villain weak and injured, his aim faltered, so instead of firing his energy beam at Midoriya, it instead flew towards the back of an unsuspected Sua Asui who was too busy celebrating their victory to notice the beam of energy heading towards her. Again, Izuku's feet were moving on their own without needing to think, just like he did when he tried to save Karchin from the sludge villain. All he knew was that Sua was in danger and he was the only one there to save her. "Midoriya?" asked Sua, turning towards Izuku, who she saw was running towards her in what looked like a panic. She didn't get an answer, for Izuku roughly shoved her away. "What are you?" Sua started before her eyes widened in horror when she saw a red energy beam hit her classmate, exactly where she was just standing. She realized that if Midoriya hadn't shoved her aside, she would have been hit instead. "Ribbit," she croaked out, watching in horror as the light from the villain's quirk washed over Midoriya's body, which then started to break down into particles of light that quickly faded away, starting with his legs. You'd think that after 10 years of bullies severely beating him and breaking his limbs whenever he used his quirk, Izuku would be used to pain by now. Sadly, the pain from being hit with whatever the villain's quirk was made all those past experiences feel like puppy kisses in comparison. It was like every cell in his body was being pierced by a sharp needle at the same time. Yet, seeing Sua looking up at him from the floor, alive and well, was enough to make the pain worth it. He might not get to grow up and become the hero he always wanted to be, but knowing that he managed to save at least one person was enough for him to die in peace. He just wished he could have said goodbye to everyone first. And so as he accepted his fate, Izuku Midoriya closed his eyes one last time and allowed himself to succumb to darkness as the last piece of his existence faded away into particles of light. XXX. Much to Izuku's surprise and great relief, he didn't die that day. Instead, he had been seemingly transported to an alternate world, so much like his own, and yet so different. Izuku pondered if the villain responsible for his conundrum understood what his odd quirk could do, doubtful as it may be. The villain probably thought that it just disintegrated anything he used it on. In the end, Izuku survived, but with no way to return home, he had to make do with the one he found himself in. A world that was both familiar and incredibly strange. Instead of countries, this Earth had just one large land mass which was filled and separated with gigantic cities which were named after the letters of the alphabet. Not the most creative, but it did keep things simple. However, the most shocking difference between his world and this one was that humanity hadn't evolved to the point of having quirks. Where his home world only had a quirkless population of 20%, this world was 100% quirkless, a fact that both baffled and amazed the once quirkless man. In the end, Izuku survived, but with no way to return home, he had to make do with the one he found himself in. A world that was both familiar and incredibly strange. Instead of countries, this Earth had just one large land mass which was filled and separated with gigantic cities which were named after the letters of the alphabet. Not the most creative, but it did keep things simple. However, the most shocking difference between his world and this one was that humanity hadn't evolved to the point of having quirks. Where his home world only had a quirkless population of 20%, this world was 100% quirkless, a fact that both baffled and amazed the once quirkless man. While there may be such large differences between the two Earths, there were still some similarities that couldn't change, alternate world or not, such as criminals that could be found in every city. Yet, criminals were considered nothing more than nuisances when compared to the real threat. Monsters. They were also known as mysterious beings, seeing as how humanity still had no clue on how they first came to be. What they did manage to learn was that some species of monsters have lived unnoticed on Earth for millennia, but the most common kind of monsters were those who were once human, but abnormal cell reactions would transform them into monsters either because of a bad habit or a burst of dissatisfaction. It reminded Izuku a lot about quirks, but these transformations could occur at any time and always result in the person turning bloodthirsty. These mysterious beings varied in strength, either weak enough to barely be a threat to a group of civilians or powerful enough to threaten the safety of multiple cities, such as Vaccine Man. The first couple of years that he spent in this strange world were spent moving from city to city, learning to better control his quirk, One for All. Since he didn't have access to Recovery Girl or any suitable ID, he had no choice but to resort to using One for All sparingly until he could better control the quirk's immense power without having to break his limbs. Thankfully, trying to use One for All sparingly led to him creating Full Cowl, a technique that allowed him to spread the flow of power from One for all over his body instead of focusing it all on one part of his body like he usually did. At first, he had only been able to implement 5% of his quirk's total power without damaging his body, but after 2 years of training and fighting both villains and mysterious beings, he learned to master One for All to its fullest. For 7 years, Izuku spent much of his time fighting villains and mysterious beings as a vigilante, since neither the police nor the military could fight against monsters that were demon-level threats or higher. However, his time spent as a vigilante changed 3 years ago after he saved the grandson of the multimillionaire Agoni from a mysterious being who went by the name Krablante. Agoni was so moved by the heroic act that he used his wealth and connections to create the Hero Association and the National Superhero Registry, therefore creating an organization that could directly fight against the threat of mysterious beings. Izuku was the first to join the Hero Association and did so under the hero name Deku. The next 3 years were spent defeating dangerous criminals and monsters of all different shapes and sizes. It didn't take him long for him to rise in the rankings until he eventually became the #1 hero in the world. After a lifetime of others telling him that he couldn't be a hero, Izuku was brought to tears during the official ceremony, having finally made his dream a reality. Shaking himself out of his head, Deku bent his knees and with a mighty leap, he went into the air, flying over the high-rise skyscrapers of City A. Another surprising factor that Izuku eventually learned about One for All was that the quirk carried the vestiges of its previous wielders. As well as that, all their quirk factors had merged with One for All's core, providing Izuku with the quirks of all his predecessors. Not including One for All, he now had access to 6 other quirks. One such quirk was Float, which belonged to All Might's predecessor and mentor, Nana Shimura. He was currently using said quirk to help him fly through the sky like a green comet. Deku stopped in midair when suddenly and without warning, an explosion erupted a few miles in the direction of City D. At the center of the explosion stood one of the largest mysterious beings Deku had ever seen. The mysterious being resembled a man without skin and had bone-like armor covering parts of his body. Since the monster didn't have any skin, Izuku could see its revealed muscles and tendons. The mysterious being was so tall that it stood well above the clouds and blocked out the sun for millions of people in City D. Giving a quick calculation, Izuku estimated the monster to be nearly 300 meters in height. Emerald lightning enveloped Deku's form before he disappeared in a burst of speed. Standing atop the shoulder of his transformed brother, Fukego laughed as he watched Maragori stomp on hundreds of people who were unlucky enough to be in the giant's path. "Yes! This is incredible, little brother. I never thought it would work so well," laughed the mad scientist. After years of working on his biceps brachii steroid, he had given the drug to his little brother, Maragori, who craved power so he could surpass Deku as the strongest man in the world. The result was Maragori turning into a mutated giant who stood taller than any building or mountain and was stronger than any hero. "With my brains and your brawn, by combining the greatest of minds and the strongest of bodies this world has to offer, the two of us will conquer the earth and rule together as kings. We're unstoppable," declared the scientist with a mad laugh. Maragori reeled his gigantic right arm back to blow away the nearby city, but the giant was cut off when a blur of green collided with his elbow. The resulting impact shattered the giant's elbow, causing it to bend unnaturally. Fukego grabbed onto his screaming brother's shoulder to steady himself from all the sudden shaking. "Maragori, what happened? So are you the one who started all this?" Fukego looked towards the source of the voice and paled at the sight of the green-haired man who was casually standing in the middle of the air as if it were normal. It didn't make logical sense, but then again, nothing about Deku made any logical sense. "Maragori, it's Deku. Kill him before he can stop us." While still in pain from having his right arm broken, Maragori complied with his older brother's order. The giant pulled back his uninjured arm and threw a punch at blinding speeds, far faster than a creature of his size should be capable of making. Still, even at such speeds, Deku's eyes easily kept track of the monster's attack. He could have dodged the attack without issue, but he didn't, for it wasn't necessary. Deku stayed hovering in the air as the massive fist flew at him. Just before the attack would connect, Deku held out his right hand and caught the punch, resulting in a powerful shockwave that could be felt for miles. Yet, Deku didn't so much as budge an inch, to the disbelief of the brothers. "How about we all go for a fly?" Deku clamped his hand on the monster's fist and suddenly bolted upwards. With his fist caught in the hero's unyielding death grip, Maragori was taken along for the ride, and with him, Fukego. "Be brother, do something," yelled a terrified Fukego who was barely holding onto the shoulder of his younger brother. Despite his transformed brother weighing well over 100 tons, Deku didn't seem to have a problem lifting him into the sky. In fact, it almost seemed like they were going faster by the second. "I am trying," yelled Maragori, who couldn't take his hand back from the hero. The hero's pull was too strong and his other arm was dangling by his side, broken. Normally, Deku would flatten the mysterious being and be on his way, but seeing as how this mysterious being was nearly 900 feet tall, he couldn't just recklessly kill it. If he did, the monster's massive corpse would collapse onto City D, killing anyone who wasn't fast enough to evacuate. He couldn't kill it in the ocean either, since its large size would cause the water levels to rise drastically, resulting in floods. So, since he couldn't kill the mysterious being anywhere on the planet, there was only one last place he could do it. Full cowl, seismic toss. After flying nearly 50 kilometers upwards, Deku grabbed the monster's fist with both hands. Gritting his teeth, he tossed the giant over his shoulder and straight out of the stratosphere. Maragori's screams could be heard for a few seconds after he was chucked off the planet, but they faded as the giant was lost in the deep expanse of space. The same couldn't be said for the Fukegao, who had fainted from a lack of oxygen and was currently falling back down to Earth. If not for Deku flying down and catching him, he would have become a bloody splatter across the ground. With the unconscious scientist on hand, Deku looked back up at the sky to make sure that the giant wasn't going to be making a return before he flew down towards the closest Hero Association branch building. City Z, Izuku's apartment. Phew, another busy day, sighed Deku once he entered his apartment. As the number one hero, Izuku's fans numbered in the billions, and while grateful for all their support, some of them could act a bit extreme at times. Many heroes have reported incidents when excited fans broke into their homes, which was why most heroes keep their home addresses a secret nowadays. For that same reason, Izuku had his apartment in City Z, which was the least populous of all the cities, due to the high percentage of monster appearances in the area, specifically in the ghost town. The apartment also happened to be on the outskirts of the ghost town, so he didn't have to go far whenever he got word of a monster sighting in the area. Midoriya's apartment was quite large for a person who lived alone, as it included a large sitting room, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a large kitchen that also made up as a dining room. Since he lived alone, Izuku was caught off guard when he smelled something cooking in his apartment. Following the lovely scent to the kitchen, all the while keeping himself prepared for a possible fight with an intruder, Izuku slowly opened the door to the kitchen and found the culprit of the delicious smell of food. "Welcome home," Izuku greeted Fubuki, who smiled at Midoriya while a stew boiled in a pot on Izuku's stove. "I cooked us dinner." Fubuki was a young woman with a curvy figure, chin length, dark green hair styled in a bob, and her eyes were a shade of light green. Her attire consisted of a long white fur coat, a dark green form-fitting dress, thigh-high black boots, and several pearl necklaces. Izuku calmed down when he saw that it was only Fubuki. He looked around his large kitchen and rolled his eyes at the B-class rank 1 hero. "Last I checked, this is my apartment, so forgive me for wondering why people are in it." "By the way, don't say you're cooking dinner when you aren't," exclaimed Deku while pointing an accusing finger at Fubuki, who was sitting at the dining table while her subordinates, Eyelashes, Lily, and Mountain Ape cooked up the stew. "I told you he'd notice," said a panicked Eyelashes to Fubuki, who ignored him. The B-class rank 2 hero was currently setting up the table for both Izuku and Fubuki. "He's going to kill us," muttered a heavily sweating Mountain Ape who was stirring the pot of stew. Mountain Ape was confident in his skills, as well as that of his fellow B-class heroes, but they just broke into the apartment of Deku himself. A man who could shatter mountains, split the seas, and clear the skies, all with a single punch. The entirety of the Blizzard group could attack Deku at the same time while he had his hands tied behind his back, and they would still have no hope of defeating the man who stood at the pinnacle of the Hero Association. Unlike Eyelashes and Mountain Ape, Lily wasn't afraid of breaking into the home of the S-class rank 1 hero, as she quickly jumped in front of Deku with stars in her eyes and a notebook in her hands. "Mr. Deku, could I please have the honor of getting your autograph?" she asked, practically pleading. As much as he should be annoyed at Lily for breaking into his home, Izuku couldn't when the young girl looked up at him with so much hope and adoration in her eyes. Not someone to let a fan down, Izuku took the offered notebook and pen from the young woman before signing his name on one of the pages. "Here you go," he said, offering the notebook back with a smile. A blushing Lily took her notebook back and looked down at it like as if it were a priceless artifact. Thank you so much, sir," she thanked, bowing low. Izuku couldn't help but chuckle over the girl's obvious excitement. "She reminds me of myself when I first met All Might," he thought in amusement, remembering how he had the same look on Lily's face all those years ago when All Might first signed his book. 10 years ago, he was a naive, quirkless boy who idolized heroes to an unhealthy degree. Now, he was the number 1 hero who still idolized heroes to an unhealthy degree. How times change. Fubuki used her psychic power to pull back the chair across from her. "Come and have a seat. Dinner should be ready soon." Having grown used to Fubuki talking to him as if he were her underling, he turned around and made his way to his bedroom. "Let me change out of my costume at least." "Do you want any help?" asked Fubuki with a coy smile. She giggled when Izuku answered by slamming his bedroom door close. Izuku is shy. "Why do you antagonize him so?" asked Eyelashes, who was on the verge of crying. He knew that Fubuki had a crush on Deku, just like every other straight woman, but why did she always feel the need to get under his skin? Fubuki turned to her subordinate with the same coy smile plastered on her face. "I don't know what you mean." Mountain Ape placed 2 plates full of stew onto the table before he and his partners lined up beside one another to bow. "If that will be all, we will take our leave." Fubuki nodded in agreement and waved them off. "You are dismissed for the day." That's all she had to say before the 3 subordinates ran out of Deku's apartment faster than Fubuki had ever seen them move before. The leader of the Blizzard group soon turned her attention to Izuku, who walked back into the kitchen, now wearing a sleeveless green t-shirt and black shorts. Not that Fubuki was complaining, since the shirt did nothing to hide his powerful muscles, nor did the shorts that showed off a lot of leg to the B-class rank 1 hero. She giggled when she read the word t-shirt, which was displayed in the middle of Izuku's t-shirt in bold black writing. Greatest hero in the world, but fashionable, Izuku was not. "Stew smells good," complimented Izuku, who took the seat across from Fubuki before he dug in. It was nice not having to cook for himself now and again. "I hope you enjoy it." "I made it with all my heart," stated Fubuki with a gentle smile and a bit of red coloring her cheeks. "Make sure to tell Mountain Ape that I appreciate the cooking," answered Izuku, although Fubuki either didn't hear him or simply chose to ignore his response. "So I see you broke into my apartment again." "Breaking in are such dirty words to use in front of a lady like myself," stated Fubuki, waving off his accusation. "Breaking in sounds like an accurate description of what you did," remarked Izuku, pointing his fork in an accusing manner at Hell's Blizzard. "You can't just enter someone's home without permission." Just after Izuku said that, a green glow enveloped his kitchen window before it telekinetically opened and a small, lithe figure let herself into the apartment. "Izuku, I came to see if you wanted to have Din-Thes class rank 2 hero, Tatsumaki, world's strongest woman, an older sister to Fubuki, stopped when she noticed that Deku and her sister were having dinner together in his apartment. "What is this?" she demanded, folding her arms together while glaring down at the two. Tatsumaki is a petite woman who has an adolescent face with emerald green eyes and green hair that naturally curls on the ends. She is adorned in a form-fitting black dress with long sleeves and 4 high-cut leg slits that show off her shapely long legs and low-heeled black shoes. Zuko saw how a few objects in his kitchen began to levitate, all due to Tatsumaki's rising telekinetic power, which was fluctuating in response to her rising anger. "Tatsu, calm down. We're just having dinner." "And if dinner is as good as this, I can't wait for dessert," teased Fubuki, uncaring of the rising pressure of her older sister's power. She knew that Tatsumaki wouldn't hurt her, so she was in no real danger of suffering Tatsumaki's rage. The same couldn't be said for the apartment complex, which was starting to shake from Tatsumaki's power. Not wanting to have his apartment collapse on top of him, Izuku slammed his fist down on his dining table, not hard enough to break it, but enough so it would produce a loud bang. "Enough!" Izuku's authoritative shout snapped Tatsumaki out of her state of anger, and she then looked down at the floor in embarrassment, looking more like a child who had been scolded. "Tatsu, I've told you this before 1,000 times, you can't let yourself lose control over your powers when you get angry. The last thing we want is for a whole city to collapse, just because you got emotional," said Izuku, hating how he had to scold Tatsumaki, but if he didn't then nobody else would. The only person in the world that Tatsumaki allowed to talk back to her was himself. Anyone else would usually find themselves 100 feet underground or tossed into orbit, and that was if she was feeling merciful. "I'm sorry," muttered Tatsumaki, refusing to look at Izuku's disappointed eyes. "Apology accepted. Now come down and take a seat while I prepare you some stew," smiled Izuku, standing up to get a plate of stew for his fellow Class S hero. "I made it myself," stated Fubuki with a smug grin while a glaring Tatsumaki lowered herself down to the chair beside Izuku's. At least that was one little victory she could rejoice in. She had her subordinates make it revealed Izuku without mercy, causing Fubuki to lose her smug grin and Tatsumaki to smirk in return. "And please stop teasing your sister, Fubuki." Izuku placed the stew in front of Tatsumaki, either not noticing or ignoring the electricity that seemed to spark between the two glaring sisters. Sitting back down to continue his meal, Izuku recalled how he was introduced to the psychic sisters. 10 years ago, a few weeks after he was transported to this world, Izuku had saved Tatsumaki's life. She was kept captive and experimented on by a group of scientists, having been sold to them by her parents when she was just a child. For years, the scientists had conducted countless experiments on Tatsumaki, many of which were agonizingly painful, all so they could study her powerful Esper abilities. At some point, a mysterious being that the scientists had been keeping locked up escaped, killing every scientist in the facility. Once the monster finished with the scientists, it came for her. At the time, Tatsumaki was too afraid to use her powers and would have died, if not for Izuku arriving in time to kill the monster. That was how Izuku and Tatsumaki met, and they've been close ever since. A few years later, Izuku was introduced to Tatsumaki's younger sister, Fubuki, who was also an Esper, but not as powerful as her older sister. The two were quick to become friends, but Izuku quickly became aware of an underlying tension between the sisters. The source of said tension was Tatsumaki's overprotectiveness over her younger sibling, which made Fubuki feel weak and restrained. Izuku managed to convince Tatsumaki to give Fubuki some space to let her grow as her own person. Thankfully, the decision helped to improve the sisters' relationship with one another, although they still bickered like siblings often did. They often fought over their views on strength. Tatsumaki believed that true strength came from oneself, whilst Fubuki believed strength came from working together to defeat one's opponent. Izuku believed they were both right in a sense, not that he could tell them that. Say what you will about the psychic sisters, but if there was one thing they shared, it was their stubbornness. They were talking about you on the news again. They mentioned how you defeated a dragon-class mysterious being in City A after it defeated 31 other heroes who couldn't so much as scratch it. Then you dealt with that giant in City D soon after. Most impressive, said Fubuki, wanting to start a conversation. There was no officially given class for the giant mysterious being, but you would have to be blind to not classify it as a dragon-level threat. Tatsumaki scoffed. Of course, Izuku could do what those 31 weaklings couldn't. Beating dragon-level monsters is nothing for someone like him. I bet Izuku didn't even break a sweat. Izuku smiled, grateful for Tatsumaki's confidence in him. It's our job to protect humanity from the threat of those monsters. Any worthwhile hero wouldn't just stand by and watch as those monsters caused havoc and destruction. I was just doing what was expected of me, simple as that. Simple my ass, thought Fubuki, brow twitching in slight annoyance. She loved Izuku's humbleness and down-to-earth attitude, but there were times that he unknowingly bragged without realizing it. Defeating 2 powerful dragon-class monsters in one day might be nothing to the S-class rank 1 hero, but for most other heroes, it was an impossibility. She could have her entire Blizzard group face off against one of those dragon-class mysterious beings and get wiped out, even with her help. The same couldn't be said for her sister, who could have wiped out those 2 monsters just as easily as Izuku did. We should go out on a mission together someday. Why, you know, if you wanted to. Not like I care or anything, said Tatsumaki, slowly reverting to Hurt Sunder mode, much to Fubuki's ire. Of all the people her sister had to like, why did it have to be the same man with whom she was hoping to confess her own feelings? She didn't want to compete against her sister for Izuku, but she would if she must, and she would win. Whenever she gathers up the courage to confess her feelings to him anyway. For now, she'll bide her time and wait for the right moment to strike. Within the confines of City I, there stood an institute that was renowned for being the only place in the world where young men and women could go to train and study to be the next generation of heroes for the world. Every year, hundreds to thousands of young teens apply to the academy in the hopes that they could spend the next 3 years of their lives, learning to become the best heroes they can be. Since the academy was only constructed 3 years ago, the current third-year student will be the very first class to graduate from the academy. The academy is famously known as Hero Academy. Built and funded by the Hero Association, Hero Academy's main purpose is to train and guide students into becoming the next generation of heroes to defend humanity from both villains and mysterious beings. While anyone could still become a hero by passing the Hero Certification exam, Hero Academy offered its students the chance to study and train before they entered the dangerous world of heroes. Another upside to joining Hero Academy was that once the students graduated after 3 years of training and studying, they automatically earn a C-class hero ranking, so they don't need to apply to pass the Hero Certification exam. Therefore, it only made sense that every teacher in Hero Academy was an official hero, even for non-heroic subjects like math and geography. Even the principal of Hero Academy was an official hero, although he wasn't just any hero. The principal of Hero Academy so happened to be the current S-Class Rank 1 hero, Izuku Midoriya, or Deku as he was more widely known. Right now, Izuku Midoriya could be found sitting in his office, which was both large and simple in taste. Sitting on a comfy office chair from behind his desk, Izuku documents that helped keep the school running one way or another. On the opposite side of his desk, there were 2 comfy green chairs for anyone to sit on who so happened to visit his office, either they be professors or students. To the left of Izuku's desk was a bookshelf filled with books that ranged in everything from science textbooks to hero biographies. To his right were 3 chairs surrounding a coffee table, and overhead them was a flat-screen television which he had on, but with the volume low to not distract him from signing his paperwork. Izuku nearly groaned in frustration as he signed another document. For the last 10 years, he has defeated various criminal organizations and mysterious beings that could destroy whole cities, and yet for some reason, signing forms was enough to tire out even his near-infinite stamina and patience. Whose stupid idea was it to make a hero school anyway, grumbled Izuku, ignoring the multiple voices in his head who reminded him it was his idea. The idea had come to him just a few months after the Hero Association was formed. While the world was lucky to get men and women of various strengths and skills to join up with the Hero Association when it first formed, there were only so many of them to patrol every city. Even then, most of the heroes weren't capable of dealing with dragon-level threats, like Vaccine Man or Elder Centipede. At the moment, only the S-Class heroes could handle the dragon-level threats, and even then, most had to work together to do so. That's why Izuku proposed the Hero Academy plan to the Hero Association. Just like with UA, Hero Academy was to train their students to be the best future heroes they could be. While the training is grueling and not everyone can keep up, those who do have shown great potential to be heroes, and they'll only improve once they graduate and gain experience on the field. From what Izuku could tell, the current third years have grown to the point where they could defeat most C-class heroes, particularly the lower-ranking ones. Since he was the one who requested it, the Hero Association nominated Deku to run the school. He accepted, but with the exception that he could run Hero Academy the way he wanted it. The last thing he wanted was for political groups to poke their noses into his school and possibly jeopardize the education of his students. Admittedly, Izuku did use some of his knowledge and experience from attending UA when he built the academy from the ground up, but he also implemented his own important features that UA was missing. One such feature was that Hero Academy would accept 200 students every year for its hero course. Unlike UA, which only accepted 40 students a year and split them into 2 classes, Hero Academy would split its 200 students into nearly 10 classes. While Izuku has no regrets about making the Hero Academy, the stack of paperwork that he needed to finish by the end of each day was starting to make Izuku regret accepting the position as principal. Why couldn't one of his quirks be a duplication quirk? So much time could be saved if he could split himself into multiple copies of himself. "I see there's no time to rest when you're the number 1 hero," said a kindly voice from the doorway. Izuku looked up from his desk and smiled once he saw who was standing by the door. "Silver Fang, it's good to see you. How are your classes going?" he asked, waving a hand towards a seat in front of his desk. Accepting the offer, the S-Class Rank 3 hero took a seat across from Izuku. "Those youngsters have too much energy for an old man like me. They're not perfect, but they're getting there. I'd say any of them could beat Chiranko at this point," chuckled Silver Fang. The martial arts master happened to be a teacher for Hero Academy, teaching martial arts to the first, second, and third years. Accepting the teaching role also helped Bang find students other than Chiranko to join his dojo, since several students had looked for further training after classes. It was nice to have the dojo filled again, especially after how his previous students left after the incident. Silver Fang wasn't the only S-Class hero who worked at Hero Academy. S-Class Rank 11 hero, Super Alloy Darkshine taught physical education to the students during his free time. That's good to hear. Hopefully, the next generation will be better prepared for when we leave the world to them, sighed Izuku, feeling far too old for someone who was only 25. Bang smiled, encouragingly. They'll be ready. The third years, I believe, are more than ready to join C-Class and even B-Class once they earn some experience. Izuku smiled at the thought but stopped when he saw the news channel on his television suddenly turn on. Turning up the volume with the remote, Izuku listened to the newscaster as they spoke. We interrupt this program with a breaking news bulletin. A large swarm of mosquitoes has been sighted in City Z. Mummified remains of attacked farm animals have also been found. If you encounter a large swarm of mosquitoes, it is strongly suggested that you flee immediately. City Z again? That city can't seem to take a break, said Silver Fang, who turned away from the television to see Deku getting up from his desk. You're going to check it out? It's the work of either a villain or a mysterious being. You think a regular swarm of mosquitoes could do that? Asked Izuku while pointing to his television, which showed an image of dead cows that were attacked by the swarm of mosquitoes. The mosquitoes sucked out every last drop of blood from the farm animals, leaving them as dried-up husks made up of only skin and bone. Deku turned and opened the window behind his desk before stepping out, standing in midair thanks to float. I need to handle this before it can do any more damage. Don't want to think about what would happen if civilians were to get attacked by that swarm. And it's a good enough excuse for you to ignore your paperwork, deadpanned Silver Fang, who glanced at the stack of paperwork that was left on Deku's desk. Sorry, can't hear you, I'm off to save the day, shouted Deku, who immediately took flight up into the air so to avoid Silver Fang's accusing glare. City Z. With a swarm of mosquitoes attacking anyone and anything alive, a warning had been sent out by the Hero Association, requesting all the residents of City Z to evacuate the city at once. By now, most residents have already fled to safety, although some have decided to use the crisis for their benefit by looting the now empty city. Ha ha ha, thanks to that warning, they're all empty, laughed a thief who walked out of a house he just robbed. Like someone's going to die from a mosquito bite, he smirked to himself before turning to his large bag of loot. What's losing a little blood if I can walk away with all of this? A sudden gust of wind surprised the thief as his hat was blown right off his head. Was that the wind? Wondered the confused thief while looking back to see his hat being blown high into the air. With his back turned, the thief didn't see the swarm of mosquitoes flying toward him until it was too late. What the? Cried the thief as thousands of mosquitoes swarmed him. The thief panicked and tried to bat away the mosquitoes with his crowbar, but it did nothing to the mosquitoes that started to suck the blood out of him. The thief could only cry out in the middle of the deserted city while tens of thousands of mosquitoes sucked up his precious blood. A few seconds later, the blood-filled mosquitoes flew off, leaving the now-dead thief as a dried-up corpse in the middle of the road. The swarm of mosquitoes returned to their queen to transfer the gathered blood to her. The queen of the mosquitoes, Mosquito Girl, sighed in disappointment. Come on, that wasn't enough blood to satisfy my needs, she moaned almost sexually before addressing her mosquito servants. Now, go get some more for me. Target has been acquired. Without warning, a stream of flames was launched up at the flying Mosquito Girl, who batted it aside before she studied the one responsible for the attack. The one responsible was the cyborg, Genos, who was a handsome young man with spiky blonde hair and pierced ears. The cyborg's most noticeable features were his eyes, which have black sclera and yellow irises. I see. You make the mosquitoes suck the blood and then take it all for yourself. You must be controlling each one by using some sort of signal. That would explain the mysterious behavior. So if I were to get rid of you, their leader, would the swarm disperse as well? Wondered Genos while glancing at the billions of mosquitoes who were all swarming behind the mysterious being, ready to move at her command. Mosquito Girl smirked down at Genos. Our next meal is here. Go drain that fool dry, she ordered. Millions of mosquitoes quickly converged on the cyborg, who remained steadfast and calm, despite the disastrous circumstance. Buried beneath all the mosquitoes, one would think that Genos was done for. Incinerate! To Mosquito Girl's surprise, the millions of mosquitoes surrounding the cyborg suddenly combusted into flames, courtesy of Genos, who now had his right arm raised, showing that he used the incineration cannon in his palm to kill the swarm of mosquitoes with overwhelming heat. I will eliminate you. Stay right where you are. While surprised by the fact her mosquitoes didn't kill the man, Mosquito Girl's arrogance quickly resurfaced. You believe you can eliminate me, giggled the monster before her expression became manic. Then go on and try. Genos accepted the challenge and ran up the wall of a nearby building to jump at Mosquito Girl, who dodged the cyborg's thrown punch and smacked him with her claw, failing to do any vital damage to his durable metal body. The mysterious being swung her other claw, but Genos blocked it with his right arm. The cyborg and monster pushed to overpower the other, but they remain at a stalemate. Seeing as he wasn't making any progress, Genos detonated an explosion of heat from a port on his arm, which propelled him away from the mysterious being. The cyborg backflipped in midair, and when he landed on the side of a building, he jumped off toward Mosquito Girl and threw a punch. Instead of dodging like last time, Mosquito Girl threw her own punch, which nullified Genos' attack. The mysterious being then used her free arm to smack the cyborg down to the ground, but Genos used his thrusters to slow his descent and landed safely on the floor. Once he safely landed, he aimed his right incineration cannon at Mosquito Girl. Incinerate! The powerful burst of flames looked like it was gonna hit the monster, but Mosquito Girl dodged it in a sudden burst of speed. While surprised, Genos continued to fire blast after blast of flames at the monster, who kept dodging while getting ever so closer to the cyborg. Like a blur, Mosquito Girl flew past the cyborg and ripped off Genos' right arm by piercing it with her enlarged horn. The monster looked back at the cyborg with a smug expression on her face. Maybe a leg next time, giggled Mosquito Girl, who only then realized that something felt off about herself. What happened to my legs? Wondered the mysterious being, who saw that she was now missing both of her legs. Genos tossed away Mosquito Girl's legs, having ripped them off the monster at the same time she took his arm. Realizing that the cyborg was tougher than she expected, Mosquito Girl attempted to flee. Not willing to allow the monster to escape, Genos aimed his remaining incineration cannon at the fleeing monster and launched an explosive ball of concentrated flames, only for a wall of mosquitoes to form up around their queen and block the attack at the cost of their own lives. You won't escape, declared Genos, who gave chase. What the hell is that guy? He'll get me if I don't come up with something, muttered Mosquito Girl in slight distress. She licked her lips. The townspeople may be hiding, but there are plenty of animals around to feed on, said the mysterious being, having sent out more of her mosquitoes to feed on the animals in the surrounding forests. The monster flew high into the air while ordering her blood-filled mosquitoes to return to her. That's it. Come here, little ones, empty all of the delicious juices you carry into me, exclaimed Mosquito Girl before being surrounded by a massive dome made up of trillions of her mosquitoes that all transferred the blood they gathered into her. So many. If she has been collecting blood from the whole town, as well as the surrounding area, then it may be more than a simple food source for her, analyzed Genos as he powered up his incinerator cannon. I shall put an end to this as soon as I can. Putting all the power he could muster into his incinerator cannon, the cyborg aimed and fired a powerful concentrated beam of fire at the massive swarm of mosquitoes. The beam impacted with the dome of mosquitoes, resulting in a mass explosion that brightened the sky for miles around. When the explosion died down, there wasn't a single mosquito left alive, nor was there any sign of their queen. Genos used his scanners to search for the monster, in case it somehow managed to survive, as doubtful as that was. Looking for me? Surprised that the monster was alive and that she somehow managed to get behind him without his sensors picking her up, Genos quickly jumped away to make space between himself and the monster. Genos then eyed the mysterious being, noting the changes in her appearance. Where her skin was once a mix of white and black, it was now a mix of pink and dark red, likely a result of all the blood she absorbed from her mosquitoes. Mosquito Girl's short white hair had grown longer and was now pinkish-red in color, flowing lazily against the wind. She even had a new pair of legs, having regenerated them to replace the ones that Genos ripped off. "You idiot, I no longer need my tiny little helpers. I mean," stated the transformed Mosquito Girl, dismissing the loss of her mosquitoes. The monster turned to the building on her right and swung a single claw at it. The power in the swing was so great that it completely destroyed the tall building, as well as the buildings behind it. "Just look at how strong I've become," she laughed before focusing her attention back on the shell-shocked cyborg. Faster than Genos could react, Mosquito Girl appeared behind him and cleaved through the left side of his body with a casual swing of her claw. Before, it required Mosquito Girl's full strength to damage Genos' mechanical body, but now, she could tear through him almost lazily. Despite his left side being shredded, Genos gritted his teeth and spun around to throw a punch at the monster, but he never got to throw the punch once Mosquito Girl batted him into the air with no effort at all. Laughing manically, Mosquito Girl flew after the airborne cyborg. Just as gravity was about to take effect on Genos' body, the monster blurred across the sky, delivering blows on the cyborg every time she passed by, whilst also keeping him stuck in the air. "Can't your macho punches kill a little mosquito?" mocked Mosquito Girl, who laughed while cutting up the cyborg's body even more. "What a weakling," she scoffed, stopping her attacks to lazily hover in the air. "I get it now. The more blood she is able to consume, the more powerful she becomes," thought Genos in realization, not that it mattered now. His mechanical body is too severely damaged, and even if he was in pristine condition, he knew he would still lose to the monster. After transforming, she became far too fast and powerful for him to beat. Lazily hovering over Genos, Mosquito Girl hummed to herself before she suddenly charged at his falling body. "I think I'll have your head next," shouted the mysterious being in sadistic glee as she reared her right arm back to cleave off Genos' head. "I let my guard down. I have no chance at winning," thought Genos as he initiated his self-destruct sequence so he could at least take the monster out with him. "All I can do is self-destruct. Forgive me, Doctor." Just as Mosquito Girl was within range to kill Genos, a blow to her side had the monster shriek in agony whilst being launched into a nearby building that collapsed down on top of her, burying the monster in a pile of rubble. Stopping his self-destruct sequence, Genos gasped at seeing the powerful monster be knocked aside so easily. "Are you all right?" The injured, but still alive cyborg turned to look up at his savior with his one good remaining eye. The man who saved him must be a hero, as he adorned a mostly green costume that was tight on his body, showcasing the raw power that was hidden in those muscles. Genos then saw that it wasn't just the costume that was green, but the hero's eyes and hair as well, practically emerald. And yet, for some reason, the man's most striking feature was his kind smile. "Who are you?" Deku blinked, doing a good job of hiding his surprise over the cyborg's question. Izuku wasn't egotistical, he became a hero to save lives, not to become popular, but being the S-class rank 1 hero brought along worldwide fame and acclaim whether he wanted it or not. Having someone not know who he was felt both odd, but also kind of refreshing. Before Izuku could open his mouth to respond, the pile of rubble exploded outwards as a pink figure flew out of it ferociously, revealing it to be none other than Mosquito Girl. From high in the air, the mysterious being glared down at Deku, seemingly not noticing the blood dripping from her mouth. "Be bastard! Just for that, I'll gut you slowly so I can feed you your own entrails," she threatened, pointing a shaky claw at Deku. Lost in pain and rage, Mosquito Girl didn't realize how much damage she had taken from Deku's punch, nor did she take note of the fist-shaped indentation on the left side of her abdomen, although she most definitely felt it. "Still alive?" "Not bad," remarked Izuku, somewhat surprised by the monster's durability. He barely used one for all when he struck her, having thought that her fragile-looking body wouldn't be able to take too much damage. The mysterious being was tougher than her body made her out to be, although it didn't take a doctor to know that the mysterious being was seriously injured. Angry over both the throbbing pain in her side and the annoying hero who didn't appear to see her as a threat, Mosquito Girl scoffed. Disappearing in a blur, she launched herself straight at the hero and aimed her claw at his neck. "Die!" Full cowl, spark punch. Mosquito Girl may be fast, especially after undergoing her transformation, but even she couldn't comprehend the speed of Deku's straight punch. One moment, she was about to slice off the human's head, and the next, she became a bloody smear along the wall of a building. Genos' mangled body was tossed back several feet as a result of the shockwave the hero's punch made. Not that he cared, he was too busy processing what he just witnessed, having been literally and fugitively blown away by the green-haired man's awe-inspiring power. Before the hero intervened, the mysterious being had been toying with him during their bout and would have killed him if she first tried. The monster must have been a dragon-level threat, if not at least demon, and the hero defeated her as easily as swatting a mosquito out of the sky. Now that the mysterious being had been dealt with, Deku turned his full attention onto the injured cyborg. "Hey, you need any help? You kind of all broken up," Deku said, somewhat awkwardly. The number one hero was afraid to pick up the injured cyborg, for fear that he might just cause even more damage. "Please, tell me your name," pleaded the injured cyborg, ignoring Izuku's worry over his condition. Deku stared at the cyborg, wondering if his injuries affected his mind as well. "I'm Deku. Please, take me as your disciple." "What?" City Z, Deku's apartment. After waiting for Genos to be taken away by the collector drones, Izuku didn't expect to see the cyborg ever again. After all, it is a big world out there, so what were the odds that they'd see each other again? So imagine his surprise when the next morning, Genos stood by his front doorstep, completely repaired and ready to learn. Instead, Izuku offered the cyborg a cup of tea. "So you want to be my disciple?" he asked for confirmation while he took a seat on his couch. Instead of taking a seat on one of Izuku's couch chairs, Genos sat on the floor on his knees. "Yes, sir." "And why is it that you want to be my disciple?" "Not to be rude, but there's not much I can teach you, physically anyway, seeing as most of your body seems to be mechanical in nature." Genos stared at Izuku, managing to look confused while still keeping a serious expression on his face. "I don't understand. Do you not have parts installed in your body, sensei?" "He already sees me as his sensei," thought Izuku in a mix of bewilderment and amusement. "No, I don't use any. You defeated that monster yesterday, with pure physical power." The cyborg's tone didn't change, but the way his eyes widened an extra half-inch was all that was needed to show his surprise. Zuko wasn't going to explain one for all to someone he only met. Not even Tatsumaki or Fubuki knew about the truth of one for all, although they knew his strength wasn't normal by any means. "I guess you could say that." "Incredible. To be as strong as you, that is my dream," said Genos, who started to explain his life story to the number one hero. Usually, Izuku was a patient man. One must be patient when dealing with one of Tatsumaki's and Fubuki's shouting matches that occur once a week, but Genos' long and detailed life story strained his patience to its limit. Altogether, it took the cyborg 20 minutes to explain, but it felt like an hour with how detailed it was. When Genos finally finished explaining his life story, it took all of Izuku's willpower to not sigh in relief. In the end, Izuku sympathized with Genos. The cyborg was looking to avenge his family by destroying the crazed cyborg that killed them. Throughout his search, Genos fought criminals and monsters that he came across in his travels, automatically putting him in Izuku's good books. Having taken the time to look over the footage from the many security cameras in City Z, he had gotten to see how the cyborg fared against Mosquito Girl before he arrived. From the footage of the fight, Izuku was impressed by the cyborg's skill. Genos had gone toe-to-toe with the demon-level monster and even forced it to retreat. If not for the mysterious being transforming into a dragon-level state, the cyborg would have likely won. Still, Izuku had never taken an actual student before. Sometimes he filled in for teachers at the Hero Academy when they turned up sick or injured from fighting monsters, but taking someone as an official student was different from teaching young teens in a classroom. He wasn't even sure what he could teach the cyborg, since he didn't need any muscle training. That's when an idea came to mind. "Tell me, Genos, have you applied to the Hero Registry?" Genos shook his head. "Not yet, but I have been planning to do so for when the next time the exam opens." "Good. I have heard that the next exam will be taking place in 2 weeks from now, so I will give you a challenge. If you pass the hero certification exam with flying colors, only then will I agree to take you on as my student, stated Izuku, much to Genos' pleasure. I won't let you down, sir, exclaimed Genos, causing Izuku to smile as he found the cyborg's determination to be inspiring. Suddenly, both hero and cyborg turned towards the far wall of Izuku's living room. Sensei, I sense targets approaching fast, stated Genos, who crouched down so he could spring into action at a moment's notice. I sense them too, remarked Izuku, who pushed himself off his couch, just as the far wall was smashed open. From the wreckage stood a mysterious being that looked like a mutated praying mantis, although the top of the monster's head was transparent, revealing its brain. Greetings, I am Kamakuri from the House of Evolution, greeted the monster before he focused his attention on Deku. I kindly ask that you come with me, Deku. If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to cut off your legs and carry you back to our headquarters. The monster rubbed his side-like forelegs together while licking his lips, seemingly wishing for Deku to refuse so he had an excuse to get violent. Normally, Izuku would just pulverize the mysterious being who just smashed into his apartment, but hearing that the monster was from the House of Evolution made him curious. House of Evolution? As in the same House of Evolution that Zombieman is from, he wondered, knowing of the S-Class Rank 8 hero's home origin after looking into his profile that the association gathered on him, just as he did with every other hero and association executive after the purge. Zombieman's profile didn't only mention how he came from the House of Evolution, but also how he didn't have the greatest of relationships with it. Not surprising, since they had used him as an experiment. By the look of the monster in front of him, this must be another one of their experiments. Izuku wasn't ignorant of his surroundings as he could sense other monsters nearby, 5 more when not including Kamakuri. An idea suddenly springs to mind. Genos, you said that you wanted to be my student. Well, I see an opportunity for you to show me what you can do. I want to see what makes you worthy to become my student. Kamakuri began to sweat heavily when Genos raised his right arm, which was now glowing with power. Exterminate! Outside the apartment on the street, Frogman and Slugurus jump in fright when a beam of fire erupts from the hole that their advanced agent, Kamakuri, made in the apartment. It seems that Kamakuri has been defeated. I can no longer sense him with my telepathy, stated Slugurus, who lost contact with his comrade when the beam of flames was shot out of the apartment. Frogman looked at Slugurus in disbelief. What? Wasn't he one of our stronger guys? The two monsters were interrupted when 2 figures jumped out of the hole in the apartment. One they recognize as their target, Deku, but they don't recognize the cyborg who was glaring daggers at them. Don't worry, Sensei. I will deal with them, stated Genos, who charged at the 2 sweating monsters, but he only managed to take 2 steps before Deku suddenly picked him up by his shoulder with one hand. Sensei? You should study your surroundings before you rush in like that, Genos told Izuku, sagely. Before Genos could ask what he meant by that, a pair of small claws poked out of the ground where Genos was just standing. After they grasped nothing but air for a moment, they retreat underground. Ground Dragon's fear only escalated once Deku turned his sights on himself. With a shriek of terror, Ground Dragon dived into the floor and began digging to escape the wrath of the strongest hero. Unfortunately, Ground Dragon didn't get far because a whip made out of black energy dived in after the monster and coiled around his body before pulling him back to the surface. After being forcefully ripped out of the underground, Ground Dragon was left suspended in front of Deku by the black whip of energy that was protruding out of the hero's open right palm. Impossible! You're going to tell me everything I need to know about the House of Evolution, ordered Deku, whose smile was no longer plastered on his face. All that was left was the strongest hero who wanted to deal with the threat that was the House of Evolution. While monsters like Kamakuri and Ground Dragon could be dealt with by nearly any C-Class or B-Class hero, the same couldn't be said about Beast King. If the House of Evolution could make monsters as strong as him, then they needed to be dealt with as soon as possible. Who knows, they might have even created another Zombieman, and that alone would be extremely problematic. Sadly, Deku wasn't getting many answers from Ground Dragon, who was so terrified over his predicament that he had lost all cognitive function. All the monster could do was sweat heavily and shake in fear. Now that Izuku thought about it, the petrified monster somewhat reminded him of his old classmate, Mineta, at least when it came to the sweating and shaking in fear part. With a sigh, Izuku went ahead to give the monster a quick death and so tightened the black whip around Ground Dragon's throat, which ended up beheading the monster in an instant. Dropping the 2 pieces of Ground Dragon's body, Izuku turned to see how Genos was doing and was impressed to see that he had already dealt with the cyborg gorilla and did so without getting so much as a scratch on himself. The same couldn't be said for the cyborg gorilla, who had lost his helmet, as well as both of his arms and legs. "Answer the question or you're going to be eliminated." "Your choice," said Genos, aiming an incinerator cannon at the crippled monster, threateningly. "It is you who will be eliminated, you fool. I am the 3rd most powerful fighter in the House of Evolution. At your power level, you will never beat the Beast King, the 2nd most powerful fighter. You will be destroyed," told Armored Gorilla, his voice sounding much like an emotionless robot. Izuku walked up from behind Genos and threw an object on the floor. Armored Gorilla looked down at the object and recognized it as Beast King's belt, although the blood on the belt buckle was new. "Beast King is dead, and if you don't want to join him, then you're going to tell us everything." For a moment, it seemed like Armored Gorilla was going to take his secrets to the grave with him. At least, until he started sweating and shaking his head in fear, comically. "Look, I'm sorry. I'll tell you everything, just don't kill me," pleaded the monster, losing his robotic voice. Izuku blinked in surprise. "Wait, what happened to your robot voice?" "Sorry about that, I was just trying to sound cool," admitted Armored Gorilla. Afterwards, Armored Gorilla explained the origins of the House of Evolution, as well as the man who created it, Dr. Genos. Dr. Genos's goal in life was the artificial evolution of humanity as a species, but since no one in the science community would help him, Dr. Genos continued his work by himself. It was only when the scientist was in his 70s did he manage to get the results he was looking for. With said results, he had managed to regain his youth, create an army of clones based on himself, and have conducted many experiments on both animals and humans, creating mutant monsters like Armored Gorilla and Beast King. Izuku also discovered that Mosquito Girl was one of Dr. Genos's creations. "Is the reason he sent you after me because of revenge?" "Because I killed Mosquito Girl?" asked Izuku, arms folded across his chest whilst his head tilted to the side, curiously. Armored Gorilla shook his head. "No. The boss man saw how easily you defeated Mosquito Girl after she gained her complete transformation, and so he ordered us to capture you and bring you back to our headquarters so he can study your body. I can see why he would want to study Sensei's body to further his research in evolution." "Sensei's body surpasses that of other humans," said Genos, having spent much of last night studying the many videos online that showed Deku performing feats of superhuman ability. Throughout the internet, Genos had witnessed Deku destroy monsters the size of skyscrapers, clear the clouds in the sky, and even conjure twisters, all with the power of his fist. Izuku frowned for many reasons. One was that if what Armored Gorilla said was true, then this Dr. Genos would likely try to capture him again, not that he was worried that he couldn't handle whatever the scientist threw at him. It was the collateral damage that the monsters would cause that he was more concerned about. Izuku also didn't like the sound of Dr. Genos's goal to try and force humanity to go through its next stage of evolution. Humanity must evolve when it is ready, not be forced into it. However, deep down, there was a more selfish reason for why Deku didn't want humanity to enter its next stage of evolution. The next stage would likely result in humanity unlocking quirks, just as they did in his homeworld, and that was the last thing he wanted. Not just because spikes of villainy would rise once people unlocked quirks, but mostly because not everyone would get a quirk of their own and would be looked down on for it by the rest of society, just like he was when he was growing up. Izuku looked down at his open palm, remembering how his life changed so drastically when he was diagnosed as quirkless. How the adults would give him pitying stares, how the teachers would shun him away from the other students as if his quirklessness was contagious, how none of the other children would play with the quirkless loser. Even Katsuki, his childhood friend, was quick to turn his back on him and became his biggest bully. If Katsuki didn't remind him about his quirkless status at least once a day, then he would use his explosion quirk on him for target practice. To show him his place, as his former friend would say. Izuku wouldn't wish such a life on anyone. Despite how upsetting his memories were, Izuku couldn't help but chuckle. Everyone looked down on him all his life for not having a. What in blazes was that? What in the hell is going on out there? Exclaimed a confused and worried Sitch. Bearded Worker was in the middle of looking at his phone while trying to communicate through his earpiece. I don't know, sir. All communications have been cut off. We're in the dark, he answered, equally worried. Sitch began to press the holographic buttons on the table before holographic screens and warnings appeared, showcasing the damage done outside. What Sitch read off the screens made his heart miss a beat. Destruction levels at 99.8%. City A has been leveled. It was destroyed in an instant, cried Sitch, grabbing his head in horror. I thought we would have more time. How could we know her prediction would come true so soon? Tatsumaki ignored bespectacled Worker's explanation of how Metal Knight built the Hero Association headquarters, which explained why it was sturdier than the average shelter and why it wasn't leveled with the rest of City A. She was more concerned for Izuku, who was staring at the holographic display that showed the high percentage of how much of City A was destroyed. The usually smiling hero lost his smile as he stared at the holograms with his mouth open in disbelief and horror. Izuku. Newman Rider was just as sickened as Deku was. He couldn't believe that an entire city was destroyed so fast. All of City A destroyed. Millions of lives, gone in an instant, muttered Newman Rider in horror. We should go outside and see what's going on for ourselves, just to be sure the prophecy is happening, said Child Emperor, just as several heroes got up to see what was happening outside. Newman Rider, I want you to search for any survivors. Watchdog Man and Flashy Flash will help as well, told Deku, standing up and giving out orders before anyone could leave the room. Watchdog Man quietly nodded, understanding the reason why he should help with search and rescue. With his enhanced sense of smell and hearing, he could find survivors faster than other heroes. However, Flashy Flash frowned. I have better things to do than dig through rubble, dismissed Flashy Flash, who turned toward the doorway to leave. A hand grabbed him by his right shoulder and stopped Flashy Flash in his tracks. Calmly, Flashy Flash looked over his shoulder to see that Deku had crossed the distance between them in an instant and was the one gripping his shoulder. I see you're still as fast as ever, he said before slapping Deku's hand off of him. So then, what now? You gonna try and force me to stay? I won't force you to do whatever you don't want to do. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. I have more important things to do than argue with you, told Deku, walking past Flashy Flash, whose eyes widened somewhat at what he perceived to be a personal insult. But if you want to keep calling yourself a hero, then you will do what is required of you. You are the fastest hero here. With your speed, you could find survivors in 1/10 of the time, but if you've got something more important to do than saving lives, you can leave. Deku walked past Flashy Flash to leave the now silent room. Ha ha ha. He told you, Bobby Pin, laughed Metal Bat while pointing a finger at Flashy Flash as he followed after Deku. HMPH, if you aren't gonna help, then leave. You'll only get in my way anyway, scoffed Tatsumaki, who floated after Deku, paying Flashy Flash no heed. The other S-Class heroes left the meeting room to find out the source of what destroyed City A, leaving Flashy Flash alone with his thoughts. For a moment, the blonde-haired man stood in silence before cursing. Damn it all, he cursed before he followed after the other heroes. If Deku wants a hero, I'll show him a hero. XXX. Within the ruins of City A, a father managed to pull his son out of the rubble of what was once their home. While relieved that the other was alive and well, their reunion was cut short by the arrival of Melzargard, a general for the Dark Matter Thieves, a group of alien invaders who've conquered countless planets in the past. Today, they plan to conquer this planet as well. Melzargard was a large humanoid alien with pale grey skin and blood-red eyes. The alien's most striking feature was its multiple heads, which were all staring at the father and son with cold, uncaring eyes. What is this? It appears there are survivors. The ship failed to kill them all. We won't. That is good, spoke each of Melzargard's heads before he aimed his right hand at the humans. Melzargard's fingers stretched and lunged at the father and son with the intent to skewer them, but the alien's fingers were suddenly sliced off. A deep cut stretched across Melzargard's chest as well. The person responsible was the A-class rank 2 hero, Yayan, who sheathed his blade. Yayan was a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes who wore a long-sleeved shirt under sleeveless medieval iron armor with a shoulder pad on his left shoulder. He also sported a matching medieval iron helmet. "Get away from here, right now," ordered Yayan to the father and son. The father was more than happy to pick up his son and flee the area. Yayan smiled when he saw them flee, but when he brought his attention back to the mysterious being, he widened his eyes when he didn't see it in front of him. All of a sudden, he felt a strong burst of bloodlust coming from right behind him. From behind Yayan, Melzargard slammed his palms together where Yayan's head was, but when the alien opened his hands, all he saw was the hero's flattened iron helmet that dropped to the floor. "You think I don't sense your thirst for blood?" Melzargard turned to see that the human dodged his attack, despite not being fast enough to save his helmet. "I accompanied Master Atomic here and was waiting for the Class S meeting to come to an end, only to meet thunder and destruction," spoke Yayan, referring to the large spaceship in the sky that came out of nowhere before it blew all of City A into a pile of ruins in an instant. "Is this your doing, beast?" he roared, jumping at Melzargard and cutting him in half with a single swing of his blade. Returning his katana to its sheath to prepare for a second attack, Yayan drew it once more and in a second, sliced the alien all across its large body. Such attacks would have killed any tiger-level mysterious being and even some demon-level ones, but to Yayan's misfortune, the mysterious being he was battling was a lot stronger than the average demon-level threat. After dealing with what he thought to be vital injuries, Yayan was displeased to see his foe regenerate. "This is one militant creature, also cautious. Hurry. Let us hurry and kill." "That is good," said Melzargard as he finished his regeneration process. The deep cuts Yayan made on the alien's body were now no more. Thank you all for watching this video. Check out the maker of the fanfic down below and goodbye.